people poorly imitating Australian accents. That's the sound they'll really hit. They'll be like black. Start versus
start.
start.
Betty Botter bought some butter, but she said the butter's bitter.
Betty Botter bought some. Betty, I can't do it.
Butter, governor.
Betty. Betty Botter bought some butter. Hi friends, I'm here today to talk to you about the difference between American English pronunciation and Australian English. And so I have a friend here to help me do that. Would you introduce yourself, please?
Hello. So my name's Chantle and I'm from Newcastle, Australia, which is on the East Coast. But I'm currently living in France at the moment.
Cool. And compared to some of the stronger accents in Australia, how would you say the Newcastle accent is?
I guess there are two to three main accents, I guess. You could say in Australia, Australia's a big country, and so most of the population is in the coastal area. And so that differs. That, I guess, is a lot more UK English. But in the country towns and in the smaller country towns and in the more rural areas, they speak a lot more Bogan. I guess, which is a lot of slang words and I guess mispronounced words and shortened version of correct English words. So but in terms of I don't think Australia has so many different accents compared to a lot of other countries.
What do you do for work?
So right now I live in France and I work at the Infectious Disease Research Centre. So I do I study the molecular pathogenesis of Ebola Zaire. So I'm just here in France as a research scientist for the last 2 years.
Cool. So are you fluent in French?
No. No. I never learned a language before coming to France, and so my mind isn't geared for language learning. And I guess because you're an English teacher, I am not familiar with all the. It's just very much hard. It's hard for somebody who hasn't learned a language before to actually, or is not like an English teacher to actually, I think, learn a language. So I've really struggled, and I'm not particularly fluent at all. I can get by, but I can read a lot more than I can speak or understand. The accent, I can't. They shorten the words, and they don't speak correctly as if you'd learn it. Like when you do online courses or you go to for an English teaching. You go to a French speaking class. It's just not really how you would speak every day living in France. So it doesn't help a whole lot, and I've had a lot of trouble getting good French tuition, I guess. So I'm really struggling 2 years in.
Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to focus on with my lessons is casual, everyday spoken English, right? As opposed to how are you today? I am fine, thank you, which is what so many ESL students learn in their classes. They learn this really hyper formal English, and when you get into even
situation, it's just not how they speak, and it's they say one word different, and I'm lost. I'm totally lost at if it's not in that exact structure that I learned, I can't cope, and I don't know what they're talking about.
Exactly. So here I have a list of words, and so I wanted to go just through some lists just to kind of establish a baseline of some of the accent differences, and I tried to find the IPA specific to the Australian pronunciation, and I couldn't find it. I was looking for a dictionary, and of course there's British ones, but the pronunciation's even different from British English. So I'm gonna have to do a little more research on that later and see if I can find anything. But so for now, I have the IPA for American English up. So just disregard that and just let's go through this list how you normally would. Let me just hear it first.
Cat, 10, sit, dog, father, cup.
So between dog and father, are those different vowels for you, that O and that A there?
Yes.
Can I hear it one more time?
So dog, father.
Yeah. So what happened in American English is in some dialects, these are different sounds, but it's what's happened was a merger of the sounds, basically. So for me, those are exactly the same. Dog and father. Short O.
Okay.
Yeah, which is why I added them both on there. And so there might even be the term short vowel is actually a misnomer because this little symbol here with the two triangle means it's actually a longer sound. So ah is a longer sound than I, right? But that's just kind of how we teach kids when we teach them. Yeah, so there's not too much difference in a lot of these. Something that I talk about and something I do when I'm learning accents is talking about resonance. So American English resonance is in the middle of the mouth. Most of our sounds kind of exist there. So it's where ha, cat, ten. Whereas the Australian resonance is a little bit different. I don't know if you know anything about that. Like when you speak, where do you feel kind of like the most vibration?
Tip of the tongue.
Tip of the tongue, yeah. So
that makes... Whereas in France, it's more in the back of the throat. So yeah.
And my Russian students, I think, have it a lot down here. My Korean students are kind of a tighter jaw. And so that's one of the like finer points of accent work that a lot of teachers don't go into is that resonance. So yeah, for American English, it's in the middle of the mouth. I've heard Australian English be as described as slightly more nasal than American. But I've also heard that it like pulls back more a tighter jaw. But it makes sense that you say tip of the tongue because that's how usually British English is taught, is that the resonance is at the tip. And so there's some similarities, and I think definitely some Australian dialects are more nasally than others, I would imagine. Cool. So yeah, let's check out these long vowels, which again, they're not necessarily a long sound, but that's what we call them. Sorry to interrupt this video, but if you like this lesson, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel and hit the bell so you get told as soon as I release a new video. Subscribers like you help me make more videos like this so you can keep practicing your English.
Cake, C, bike, bone, tube, cube.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let's look at cake. Let me hear cake one more time.
Cake.
Yeah, so you have a little more of a diphthong than me. So for me, it's cake, A. Mm-hmm. Let me hear yours again.
Cake.
Cake. So yeah, it has that dip. Cool. Let me hear the second one.
C.
C. Yeah, even that has a little bit of it. For me, it's more of a straight sound. C versus C. Right.
This is coming into play.
Yeah, I haven't worked on my Australian accent very much, so it's not perfect. Yeah, how about that long I?
Bike.
Yeah, so that's one of the bigger ones, and I think people with a stronger Australian accent or people poorly imitating Australian accents, that's the sound they'll really hit. They'll be like black, right?
Well, I've lost some of my accent living in France for 2 years, so I'm probably not the best Australian at the moment. Yeah. Bike.
Bike. Yeah. Cool. How about bone?
Bone.
Yeah, and that has it too. Bone versus bone. Bone. And then this one's interesting. This long U, there's two different sounds in the American English. So you had that Y, tube, cube on both of these, and we only have it on cube. And so for a word like tube or Tuesday, news, these are some of the words that my students that originally learned British English struggle with in American English, where they don't have a British accent at all, but these are the things that kind of like hang on a little bit. And so they say Tuesday, tube, news. That seems the same in Australian, right?
Yeah.
Like, how would you say Tuesday?
Tuesday.
Tuesday. Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah. So this symbol here, I don't know why in the IPA the sound for Y is actually a J symbol in the IPA. So that's the difference there is U versus U, tube versus cube for American English. Cool. So these are the vowels that we don't have specific names for, most of them. So I've just put them under other vowels. So let me hear these words.
Book, food, cow, boy, banana, the.
Yeah. So there's a lot of similarities here. Book sounds about the same to me as the American accent. Let me hear that one more time.
Book.
Book. Yeah. So it's that sound down in the throat. How about food? So
food.
Food. Yeah. So that's almost, I I talk about sometimes with the resonance change, even though the pronunciation of the specific sound doesn't change that much, where you place the sound in your mouth kind of changes it, right? So American resonance would be middle, ooh, food, right? Versus pushing it forward more, food, food.
Yeah, I'm pushing it forward to tip the tongue.
Cow, I definitely heard more of a difference there. So let me hear that again.
Cow.
Cow. Yeah, so that has more of a dip than the American English. How about boy?
Boy.
Boy. Yeah, it's very similar. And banana?
Banana.
Banana. Yeah, so your short A here. American English, we have this kind of nasally sound, banana, which is like the bane of my students' existence, like So the symbol is the same as a short A, just like cat, but the sound is really quite different in the general American. Banana, yeah. And so these little upside down E's here are the schwa, and so those sound basically the same in Australian English and American English. It's just the unstressed the. Cool. Now the fun part, R controlled vowels. These are where we're going to see some of the biggest differences.
Okay. Bird, teacher, door, ear, bear, berry, pure.
Yeah. So the one that stood out the most to me was definitely bear. So can I hear that again?
Bear.
Bear. Yeah. So you don't even this is another tough one. All of these R sounds are really, really tough for non-native speakers to get to that right? So I always teach my students, it's like at the end you have to get to that R for the American accent, right? Bear, But in that way, an Australian accent might actually be easier for some non-native speakers because they could just go bear. They don't have to go to that sound. Yeah. So let me hear bird again.
Bird.
Bird. Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like the difference is so slight. It's almost kind of like hard to put my finger on what it actually is. Yeah. So let me hear teacher.
Teacher.
Yeah. So So you don't ever really come to that final R sound, right?
No, I mean I guess more British to say teacher, but teacher is how we say it in Australia. So I guess that's more of our bogan way of speaking compared to the English. But yeah, like I would say teacher.
Teacher. Yeah, cool. All right, let's go to this list now.
Okay, little, girl, water, squirrel, rural, roof, comfortable, mischievous, clearly.
Interesting. Okay, so little has what we call a flap T. So when it kind of sounds like a soft D sound, little. So it's interesting that you do the flap T for little, same as American English, but not for water. We do it for water, and it sounds like a D. But you had little and water, right, with a T, more of a pronounced T sound.
Water. Yeah.
Does that sound weird to you to do the flap T there?
It does a little, yeah, like water. Yeah, I mean, we say it both ways. I think when I'd say it differently depending on the day, either water or water. So, yeah.
We have that a lot with any NT words, like internet, painting. We'll drop the T, or sometimes it'll come back, painting, internet. How do you say those words?
Painting, internet.
So you keep the T?
Yeah.
Interesting. Comfortable, it sounded pretty much the same, which was surprising. Some people will say comfortable, but that is just a mouthful. And then fun fact about, I recently learned this word, over 50% of the population, by one of the sources I looked at, pronounces it mischievous, but that's actually a mispronunciation. I used to pronounce it that way too. It says, we think that the I is here because so many words end with IOUS, but it's actually mischievous is like the correct pronunciation.
Yeah.
I did. My whole life I said mischievous, and then I read this thing that's like, actually it's mischievous, and I was like, oh, my whole life is blown up.
Nah. Yeah. Oh my.
I was today years old when I learned. Cool. All All right, this next one, sorry.
Oh, what?
Just for fun.
Incomprehensibilities. Okay. Anti-disestablishmentarianism. What the hell is this one? No, hold on. That's not French. So I'm trying to qua, but it's not because I know it's not French. Sesquipedalianism. Oh my God. Pneumonial tramicroscopic. What? Is this a word?
These are real. These are real English words. So I googled the longest words in the English language.
Pneumonial microscopus.
Microscopic cilia.
Oh, so that that was a microscopic volcano conosius. No.
Yeah. I can't help you there. I just thought it would be funny.
Well, what does that mean?
It's some sort of lung disorder that comes from inhaling something specific. It's like a medical scientific thing.
I should know how to say that then.
I know, I thought maybe.
Microscopic when it was separated on two words like that. On two lines, so I got no hope.
Yeah. And then this second one, had you not heard this one before?
No.
I had a friend growing up, and she would be like, the longest word in the English language is anti-disestablishmentarianism. And I don't know if it was on a TV show or where she got that from, but it was like a thing in America, at least. And it turns out that's not the longest word in English, but it's up there.
What's this third one?
Third one?
How do you say that?
Pedalianism, possibly? I don't know.
Oh, okay, not would have said that.
Yeah. Here we have one of my favorite tongue twisters. I've already done a video on this for American English, but I would like to hear how it sounds in Australian dialect.
Betty Botter. Betty Botter bought some butter, but she said the butter's bitter. If I put it in my batter, it will make my batter bitter, but a bit of better butter will make my batter better. I think I said that right.
No, it's good. Yeah, so it's a good, so you don't do the flap T's there. So when I say it's Betty Botter bought some butter, so all of those T's change to D sounds in the general American accent. So let me try to do the Australian accent. So let me hear just like the first line of that.
So Betty Botter bought some butter.
Okay. So Betty Botter bought some Betty. I can't do it.
Butter, governor.
Betty. Betty Botter bought some butter. Yeah. My Australian's really rough. So let me try one word at a time. So do the Betty.
Betty Botter bought some. Sorry. Betty Botter bought some butter.
Betty Botter bought some butter.
Butter.
Abysmal. Yes, I apologize.
Reading time. The other day I went down to the store and bought a few things that I needed. When I got finished, I went back to my car, but it wouldn't start. I had to call my friend to come give me a jump start, but unfortunately it still wouldn't start, so I had to call a tow truck. When I got to the mechanic, he told me the transmission blew. Fixing it was going to cost more than the car. I guess it was time for a new car anyway.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, so it sounds like the rhythm of Australian English sounds closer to American English to me than maybe the rhythm of British English, just like the way that it flowed when you read it. And so the differences aren't that vast. It's pretty subtle in some of the sounds. Can I hear the word transmission?
Transmission.
Yeah. So I think that's back to like the resonance. Like a lot of the sounds aren't particularly different, but there's just slightly different placement in the mouth. How about the word start?
Start.
Yeah, so that's the one that we lose that that very crunchy R in the general American start versus
start.
Good.